some games that came down to the wire. Maybe some ugly football in there.
Yeah,
Tyler,
sure.
The Georgia Bulldogs.
It was
ugly game.
It was not the prettiest game. They found a way to win with a backup quarterback in Gunnar Stockton. For those that maybe forgotten about him, I know a former South Carolina commit at one point in time, but Texas can't get past Georgia for whatever reason. And Texas is a very physical football team, but Georgia, for the second straight game, dominated them in the trenches. Texas has given up 28 sacks this year. 13 of them have been to Georgia.
Have some kind of voodoo. Because, Texas has a talented offensive line.
Yep.
Right? And then you look at that number, you're like, 28 sacks isn't that good, man. And it's like, no, it's not. But, again, literally almost half.
Yeah.
One short of a half coming in 2 games.
And between the 2 games, they have 60 rushing yards. Between 2 games, 60 rushing yards.
2 teams with that was an interesting game because of the quarterback situation, right?
Yes.
Beck goes down. Looks like he has I don't want to speak out of turn. I'm certainly not a doctor, but he's got a UCL injury, which is what you heard, Tommy John,
right.
surgery. So that doesn't look great. Their punter's out.
Yeah, which that might be an even bigger deal.
He was utilized a lot the other day.
He was.
And then you had, obviously for Texas, you had, kind of this lingering question of, should they have played Arch Manning more, throughout the season and certainly in the postseason? So, interesting situation. You now have a Georgia team that's going to be rolling into the playoffs, and when you saw your draw, you go, oh, that's, I saw somebody say that Georgia's going to waltz into the semis or whatever, and it's like, well, maybe, but, when you're missing your quarterback, as inconsistent as Beck has been, and as well as Gunnar Stockton did in, stabilizing things for them and going down and helping lead them to a win, that's still a huge question.
It is, and I'm intrigued to see, because I would lean towards Carson Beck is not coming back, and he's played his last game at Georgia. I'm interested to see how much the offense changes with the Gunnar Stockton, because, again, he's a guy that brings a different skill set, a lot more mobile than Carson Beck is. And if you try and run some of the, kind of the stuff you run with, like Lenore Sellers here, where, you do more quarterback power, you do more read option type stuff where the quarterback is actually a threat to run the ball. And if that can, I don't want to say necessarily neutralizes not having your main starting quarterback in, but there's enough wrinkle in there to kind of keep whatever opponent you end up facing in that quarterfinal game, whether it be Notre Dame or in Indiana, guessing a little bit.
Yeah, for Georgia, you just go through with this team, and look, at the end of the day, this is a results business, right? And so their result is that they won the SEC, and their result is that they're getting a first-round bye and have a path to play for a national championship. At the end of the day, every team in the field is flawed.
Sure. But the exception of, I guess, Oregon, technically.
Yeah, but right. You could pick out even some things about Oregon. It's not like you look at Oregon and say nobody's beating them.
Sure.
So far, but they're about to step it up in terms of competition once you get into the playoff, too. So everybody's thawed. They might be thawed. Everybody is flawed going into the playoff. Georgia's just going to walk in with, I think, a really significant question at quarterback. The punter thing, Brett Thorson's a good punter.
Very good punter.
So that does weigh into this equation. We'll see what happens there. But certainly quarterback's something that you look at. So maybe you view Georgia a little bit differently now.
Elsewhere, as far as conference championship games go, the Big Ten, you had the unexpected matchup of Oregon and Penn State, of course, after Ohio State lost to Michigan. And Oregon jumped out to that 28-10 lead. Looks like they were going to end up routing the Nittany Lions. Penn State ends up storming back. I don't know why they went for that 2-point conversion early in the fourth quarter. They ended up losing the game 45-37. But in a very weird way, their path to the college football playoff national championship is a little bit easier than what Oregon has. And this goes back to something that I brought up many times, is the fact that there's no reseeding in the college football playoff is insane to me, because Oregon, by being the number 1 team, by winning the Big Ten championship and earning the bye, they get the winner of Ohio State and Tennessee. Penn State, yes, has to play an extra game. It is at home, and they get SMU. And if they win that game, they get Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl.
I have a general point that's related to that, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it. So I'm glad you're here today.
Okay.
I'm glad you're here in general. But,
thank you.
So, first-round buys, great, right? Like, you
In
get
theory.
a first-round bye.
Sure.
That's phenomenal. You literally get to skip a game on your path to play for a national championship. That's your goal. You got to go win a few more, obviously, but you get to skip a game. Here's the weird thing to me about the playoff, and tell me if I'm missing something. So you get the bye, phenomenal. But if you don't get the bye and you're a higher seed out of the teams that don't get a bye, you get to host a first-round playoff game.
Yes.
You know, that to me, there's kind of a little bit of a disconnect there. Yes, I know you have to play the game.
Sure.
But it would almost make more sense to me to reverse it. I know we got to protect the bowls. I know the bowls are a big deal. But in an ideal world, why wouldn't you switch out the bowls, make those the first round, and then the second round, the team that has earned a bye, you play those as on-campus playoff games in the second round? What am I missing?
It's not a bad idea. And this goes back to something, when they announced this 12-team format. Look, if we were starting this completely from scratch, bowls would have nothing to do with this. Like the fact, and I get it, there's a lot of money tied up in bowls and history and all that kind of stuff, but trying to circumvent the bowls to fit within the playoff structure is kind of ridiculous to me. Like, it's cool that, the Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl and all those kind of things are going to matter. Nobody's going to be opting out of those games. But in a sense, as we see in every other level of football, the higher seeds get to host all up until the neutral site championship game. And I think about this from the perspective of a fan base that you're asking to travel to all of these games. So let's just say you're Arizona State, right? And let's say they go on a run. First time in the playoff, you're going to travel all the way across the country to go play in Atlanta for the Peach Bowl in your semi or quarterfinal game. Then let's say you win that. You're either going to go travel to Texas or you're going to travel to Miami to play in the semifinal game. Then if you win that, guess what? You're going all the way back to Atlanta again to play in the national championship game. And again, there are a lot of people that would pony up the dough to do that, but that is a lot of back and forth over the course of essentially a month for one fan base to do.
Well, and so you earn the bye, and whoever came up with this format, let's just say generally, they would say, well, Arizona State, they're getting a bye. It's like, yeah, cool, but Texas gets to host a playoff game. Mm-hmm. Then you start, if you really, and you can't predict this every year, but let's drill down into Arizona State's path. Their path is now, yes, you get to skip forward to the second round. That's great. You get the bye. But let's say Clemson beats Texas. Clemson's going to be rolling into Atlanta, Georgia. That'll be a Clemson home game. Let's just be real.
For sure.
That'll be 75-25, I would say. Or maybe worse.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Worse for Arizona State. And so to me, like, if you have done – now, the counter argument is, well, Chris, some of these teams, like Arizona State, they're not in the top – what were they? What did they finish up ranked? 12th?
I think so.
Yeah. They're not in the league group. They didn't earn that home playoff game. They earned a bye just because that was our way of shoehorning conference champions that maybe, wouldn't have been in that top group, because they were close, obviously. They were literally number 12. So, I mean, I get the give and take with it. I just think that, if you get a bye, you miss out on the home playoff game. And I understand there's an exchange there because some of the teams that are getting a bye finished higher than Arizona State. So, I get that. It's kind of just a little bit wonky to me.
It's very clunky for sure. And look, this is only a 2-year system with this 12-team playoff. I imagine, especially the fact that Alabama, Ole Miss, and South Carolina all missed out as 3-loss SEC teams. If I were to bet on it, I'd say in 2026 we're going to 16. There will be no first-round buys. It will be, the top 8 seeds, no AQs, hosting home playoff games. Then we'll go from there because, again, I don't think the SEC is going to let only 3 teams getting in stand, especially with how much power they wield.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be fascinating. Like you said, that's important to remember that we have a couple things to carry into the offseason. This is a 2-year format, and also Ward Manuel's not going to be chairing the committee every year. Right?
No.
That's something I've had to remind myself of is the committee is going to change. So
And the committee's more than just him.
It's more than just him.
He's the figurehead who
He's
we
the
hear
face.
from, but this is the collective of 13 people
That's right.
that come to these decisions. He's just the one that rolls out on TV every single week and gives the nothing answers.
Yeah, the word salads.
Exactly.
I saw Chase Parham, my guy from Rebel Grove, said, hey, if you were into word salads, this is your Super Bowl. Like the night that he came out afterwards. And, and that's the thing, like, we say a lot. I've said this, Tyler. I'm guilty. The committee set a precedent of X or Y. They don't set any precedents.
Right.
That they set a precedent last year, didn't follow the precedent this year. They don't really set a precedent because one thing that we really know is this is going to change year to year of who's in the committee, how they think as a collective, the things that they say, their reasonings, their criteria. And we also know, because you can follow the data points. How about that? You can follow the data points.
Beamer's throwing up if he's listening.
From every week, and you can see that they're going to pick and choose their criteria based on, hey, we think this team's here, we think this team's here. And you kind of have to pull the PR stunt of just kind of saying something, again, the word salad.
Sure. And again, it was a fun weekend of conference championship games. We now get about a week and a half until we see the first round of the college football playoff, which we'll talk plenty about leading up into those games coming up next weekend. Coming up next, big news on the South Carolina front. A major name confirmed to be back for 2025. Tell you about that coming up next. It is the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating on your Tuesday on the Game.
All right, if you're looking for a reliable local roofer for your home or for your business, let me recommend our friends Joe Reeder and Max Sawyer over at Classic Roofing, classicroofingsc.com. They have an outstanding website. You can find out more about their services. They're here for all of your roofing needs, repairs, replacements, installations, inspections. They can do it all for you. They're a local company with families that live right here in the Midlands. And they're a reliable GAF certified roofer, and only about 7% of roofers nationwide have that certification. So they're going to get the job done for you. Building your roof, remodeling your roof, replacing your roof, it can all be challenging. Doesn't have to be that way because Joe and Mac and the team at Classic Roofing can help you out with it. 803-590-7870 is where you can go to learn more. You can get a free estimate at classicroofingsc.com. You can even look with their virtual design tool at building your new roof online. classicroofingsc.com.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Schooling and Heating. Tyler and Chris along with you here on your Tuesday morning. If you've not seen the news already, this just coming out a few minutes ago. South Carolina freshman edge Dylan Stewart has signed a new deal with the Garnet Trust and is confirmed to be returning for the 2025 season for South Carolina. Now, there was no threat of him leaving or anything like that. Well, we know there was reporting going on a couple weeks back about this new deal they were trying to put together for his return sophomore season. It's now been confirmed. He's signed back on with them, and you don't have to sweat Dylan Stewart hopping in the portal over these next couple of weeks.
One thing that I've seen this came out right at 10, it looks like. One thing I've seen in the less than 20 minutes is people saying, a few people, most people are rightfully just excited that the guy who was the best true freshman defender in the country for 2024 is coming back. Most people are just excited about that. But I've seen a few, why is this news? Well, because it's 2024.
Yep.
About to be 2025. And it's an era where we have seen some portal shockers of why is that guy getting in the portal? He seems to be, a starter and completely happy, and what's going on here, right? We've seen that across the country. And so I just saw a few minutes ago, unless I've been had by one of these fake Twitter accounts, that Missouri's 5-star freshman from last year, Williams Nweri, is entering the portal.
Who came in as a result of their NIL law within the state.
5-star, super freshman, edge rusher, came in with a bunch of hype.
Yep.
Portaling. And so there's your evidence of why you should be excited about this. Now, again, we don't have to, another thing I saw. So, because, of course, it was announced that Dylan Stewart's also signing a new NIL agreement with Garnet Trust, the collective in South Carolina. So you could say, well, is that the only way to get it done nowadays, is to sign an NIL deal? Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Pretty much.
And I've seen this, over the past couple of days, is the portal's been opening and guys are either going in or returning. A lot of people are very put off by the phrase signed a new deal because, again, that's very pro sports, but essentially that's what college sports has become with legalized name, image, and likeness. If you want to retain your top talent, as we've talked about with Mark and Jeremy and everybody else from Garnet Trust that's come through here, you have to make it worth their while and pay them what they, what the market says they should be paid, essentially, which, again, it's an open market and that can be kind of, skewed at times. But we heard the number being reported in the 7-figure range a couple of weeks ago, that's what Dylan Stewart was, going to need to come back here. And as I imagine, we're not stupid. There were probably a lot of programs around the country blowing up his phone like, hey, come play for us. We'll get you this. So they warned off those threats. He's coming back, and he's getting the deal that fits what his production is.
Yeah, and, the number has not been reported, confirmed, anything like that. I'm sure it's a good, lucrative deal, but, this, again, look at the production. Look at Dylan Stewart could call any coaching staff in the country and say, I would like to play for your team. And they would say, how can we make that happen?
Yep.
And the good news for South Carolina, I don't think you take this as he's only staying because they're giving him a deal. Dylan Stewart could get a deal anywhere. I would probably say if let's say hypothetically it ends up being the deal is in that range that you said or even close to it. He could probably get more. He could call up Dan Lanning, Oregon, Phil Knight. Hey, I need $3 million to come to their school. I guarantee you they're going to think hard about that. They maybe even just sign off immediately.
They would find it some kind of way.
So this is a kid, again, who is one of the best players in the country already as a freshman, and now you have him locked in for another year. Dylan Stewart loves it here. This isn't a situation where he's shaking people down, give me this or I'm leaving. That's not it. No. But you take care of your guys. And Shane Beamer's talked about this a lot, Tyler. Darren Usher, the director of player personnel and recruiting for Gamecock football, he was on with me and Wes after signing day for about an hour on GC Live on our podcast, and he talked about retention. and just how significant it is for your team. Yes, the portal is fun. You can go plug holes. You can go get impact guys from the portal. We saw that from Kyle Kennard, Rocket Sanders, Demetrius Knight. But developing guys at the high school level is still a huge priority. That's how you want to build things. So you signed Dylan Stewart out of high school. People were super excited. He came in, did exactly what you envisioned and more, and now you get to keep him. There's no negative to this.
There's not. And look, when we saw him producing at the level that he was early on in the season, we were having these conversations back in September and October, like, hey, you need to start thinking about what it's going to take to retain this guy because, again, as we've seen in today's era, and, don't hate the players, hate the game, talent gets poached. And if you're a school that cannot pony up to keep top talent, and guess what? The Ohio States, the Alabamas, the Texas, the Oregons, they're all going to come in and take your talent because they can't afford to steal those guys. And again, South Carolina, Garnet Trust saw, hey, it's going to take X amount of dollars to get this guy to come back. They were able to get it. And again, we don't know what that number is. That's not public information, and it may come out down the road with the new revenue sharing and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. But they did what they needed to do to make sure he stuck around. And again, you want to talk about a great recruiting pitch to other guys on defense? Hey, come play with what could be a first-round, number 1 overall pick in a couple of years.
Kyle Kennard just won the Nagurski last night. Best defensive player in the country. A guy who came here for 1 year, and Kyle talked about this a little bit last night in his speech, just kind of had a different mindset going into the season and said South Carolina was part of it. He's credited Sterling Lucas. Sterling Lucas can now go, whether it's high school or the portal, and say, hey, I developed a Nagurski Award winner, and then I took a 5-star freshman who, and both of those guys obviously deserve the lion's share of the talent because they're just talented kids who work very hard. But he's now got the best defensive player in football, and he's got the best freshman edge rusher, best freshman defender in football on the resume. So, a lot of things weigh into the transfer portal and recruiting equation. All the things that used to matter still matter, but then you add in, NIL, of course. But that's a heck of a couple really nice things to put on your resume if you're Sterling Lucas.
Well, and now as you're going into looking in the portal, and again, edge is not as high a priority this year as it was last year, but you go out there and, you say, hey, who wants to come play on the opposite side of Dylan Stewart? Because, again, you saw Kyle Kennard have the ability to benefit from a lot of attention being paid to Dylan Stewart and vice versa as well. When you have threats coming off both sides, both guys end up being productive because, again, you can only choose really one side to defend compared to the other. So do you want somebody else that comes in and can have that Kyle Kennard type of role opposite of Dylan Stewart? We'll see what happens. Again, it's not the top priority, but it'd be nice to be able to bring somebody else in that could maybe have the same kind of effect.
Yeah, we don't know yet. Portal's been open for just a day. Some guys had gotten in before as either, guys that were the only other two parties, to my knowledge, that could get in before graduates, and then guys in which their coach had been fired. But now the portal is, as the kids say, popping. And by the way, I mentioned Williams Nweri. I might be pronouncing his name wrong. Tyler, save me if so. But the 5-star freshman from Missouri, he is that was legitimate. He is getting in the portal. So if you don't think it's news that Carolina's retaining their 5-star super freshman, it is. So we'll see where that goes. Certainly, South Carolina has created a really nice story to sell in the portal, right?
Yeah.
2 edge guys, Kennard, Stewart, playing opposite of Stewart, Sterling Lucas, what he's done with guys, his NFL background. Carolina being a program that looks like it's on the rise with the season that it had and being on the cusp of the playoff. Really nice story. So we'll see where that goes.
We'll dive back into this coming up at 11, get Wes's thoughts on it as he was one of the ones that reported on when it came out at 10 o'clock as well. Coming up next, though, I want to dive into something that Greg McElroy said yesterday on Jocks FM about Alabama, and this being a learning lesson when it comes to them missing out on the college football playoff. We'll dive into that coming up next. It is the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Grant's Cooling and Heating on your Tuesday on the Game.
All right, I want to tell everybody about our friends over at Integrated Media. You hear us talk about them every day here on the game. One of our outstanding partners that can help you with any of your home or business's audio-visual needs. One of the coolest things about Integrated Media, they can make your home into a smart home. What does that mean, you may be wondering? They can help you control all of your lights, your thermostats, your devices, your security and cameras, all from the touch of a button on your smartphone. So if you're traveling, want to check on the house with your security and cameras, they can install all of this for you, by the way, and then hook it up to your smart home system. You can do that. If you want to turn the temperature up or down, if you're downstairs chilling on the couch, frankly being a little bit lazy, hey, let's cut the temperature up or down upstairs. You can do that. If you're traveling, want to save some money on your power bill, you can do the same thing. Any audio-visual needs, any smart home needs, they can do it for you. Integrated Media Columbia on Instagram or Facebook, integratedmediainc.com.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Crane Schooling, Heating. Tyler and Chris along with you here on your Tuesday on the game. We touched a little bit earlier on, the college football playoff, 12-team field, playoff games coming up starting next weekend with first-round games on campus sites. Of course, the controversy, and I know they got talked about a lot yesterday, was obviously SMU making it in over Alabama for that final spot. They'll take on Penn State in the first round game to see who's going to play Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl, and the strength of schedule thing and all, the whole debate about Alabama getting left out. There's going to be a ripple effect. As I said, I think we're eventually going to get 16 teams because the SEC is not going to stand for a team like Alabama getting left out. But for now, it is what it is, and Alabama's going to have to settle for the ReliaQuest Bowl in a rematch from last year's Rose Bowl with Michigan that I'm sure all the folks in Tuscaloosa are just absolutely thrilled about. But Greg McElroy, cut number 5 here, Dave, on our sister station, Jocks FM, out there in Birmingham, yesterday talked about this being an opportunity to learn for this Alabama team going forward by missing out on this college football playoff.
My view on it is this is a really good learning lesson. And I hate it. Nick Saban used to always say, never waste a failure. Never waste a failure. I'm almost happy. Like I said, this is from Bama fans' perspective. I am happy that this happened. Because had they gotten in, it would have reinforced, hey, we don't have to do the right thing all the time. We still got in the playoff. We were afforded the benefit of the doubt. But guess what? When you touch the stove and it's hot and you get burned, you're not going to touch it the next time. So I think there's going to be a lot of good that comes from this. In buy-in, in weekly respect of the opposition, in practice habits, in knowing that, hey, when you have the ball in your racket, you got to serve and hold serve. I think good will come of this. And while it hurts in the short term, yeah, of course, as a Bama fan, I'm disappointed this season ended the way it did. The regular season, that is, still a bowl game to play for, still a chance to extend that 10-win season streak. Still a lot to play for, in my opinion, but I think this is a good learning experience for the young players on the team and for the guys that will be coming back next year, knowing that you can't play with your food. You gotta play at a high level every week, and if you don't, you're in big trouble.
First of all, how many angry phone calls do you think he got immediately after saying, I think this is a good thing for the Alabama program?
He pulled a full John Calipari. Like, every time Cal would lose a game, like, he lost some games to South Carolina in the past. This is good for us.
Sure. Learning opportunity.
This is good. We needed this. And, sometimes there's, like some people said when the women's basketball team lost to UCLA earlier this season, we needed a loss.
And they've played like, killers since then.
Kind of seems like there's something to that, right? So, the Bama situation is fascinating. Because you just look at all the different angles there.
Sure.
And it was, the committee's going to put them in because they're the brand, and they did. But then when the final rankings came out, it was, all right, will it be Bama or SMU? They kept SMU, right? And then the Citrus Bowl, who has the first pick of the non-playoff SEC teams, a lot of people across the sport, I would say a lot of people, even at South Carolina that we were talking to leading up to the bowl announcement, were sitting there thinking, the Citrus will probably take Bama, right? They're the highest ranked non-CFP team. They're Bama. They didn't. And Beamer talked about that the other night. He said, look, they chose us. That means something. And so Bama reeling a little bit. They had the bad losses. They're still, Greg Byrne, their AD, who was putting out shiny graphics before.
Got community noted on Twitter.
Got community noted. Yeah, right. But, there's something to that because, well, we're not going to schedule hard games anymore. All right, well, dude, let's back up. You didn't lose to Mercer.
No.
The games you lost, you can go back and look at them. 2 of them were to a 6-win Oklahoma team. Oh, by 3 touchdowns.
Yep.
And then you went and lost on the road to Vandy, who was much improved this year, but is a 6-win team, right?
Yep, 500.
You lost 2 6-win teams.
Just beat one of them and you're in.
And then you may say, well, we're tired from playing the schedule. We have to get up for every game every week. Okay. So does everybody else in the SEC. So, South Carolina, by the way, quick point. Out of those 3, there were arguments for and against Ole Miss, Bama, and South Carolina. South Carolina is the only one that can say we didn't have a horrific loss.
Yeah.
Their worst loss, quote unquote, not from a point standpoint, their worst loss in terms of the quality of opponent was to an 8-win team where their quarterback didn't play for a half and the officiating was horrific. They can hang their hat on that.
They can, and LSU didn't fall out of the top 25 until the very end of the season. So for the most of the year, they were a ranked team, as opposed to losing to Kentucky or losing to Oklahoma or, whatever it may be with those other two teams. I'm intrigued because, like with Nick Saban's teams, sure, they had down years. 2019, they played in the Citrus Bowl, I think actually against Michigan, funny enough, after, LSU went on their run and won the national championship. The next year they bounced back, won the national championship, went undefeated, and obviously, continued to stay at the top of college football until, Saban retired at the end of last year. With Kalen DeBoer, though, we don't really know, because here's the thing. This team was wildly inconsistent this year. They could go out there and beat a Georgia team one week, lose to Vanderbilt the next. They go out there and run all over LSU in Death Valley and then lose by 3 touchdowns to Oklahoma. They just haven't been the model of Alabama that we've come to know because, again, the guy at the helm is different and does things differently, which is fine. But I can't sit here with a lot of confidence and say, well, they're definitely going to bounce back next year and be a 10-11 win team, because I don't know that. And nobody knows that. We're going to have to see what happens. And when you kind of look, using last year as an example, you had two teams that really felt like they got snubbed from last year's college football playoff. Florida State as an undefeated conference champion, and Georgia, who went to the SEC championship game as the number 1 team and fell to 6 despite only losing by 3 points to Alabama. Georgia went out there, mauled Florida State in the Orange Bowl, by the way, but came back this year, won 10 games, won the SEC championship game, and now have a first-round bye in the playoff. Florida State is well documented. They fell off a cliff. They fired their coordinators. Mark Norvell's on the hot seat going into next year, and that program's in shambles as of right now. And I'm not saying that Alabama is going to fall to that kind of extreme, but it's going to be interesting to see how they do take this snub, in their opinion, and build off that going into next year, and if that makes them better or worse.
Yeah, it's almost incomprehensible to think that. I mean, the FSU thing was almost incomprehensible.
Yeah.
You could have looked at it and said, they're not going to be nearly as good. They're not going to go 13-0. But to be a one sitting there and they're a 2-win team like that.
One of those is against Charleston Southern.
It's just unbelievable, right? So you can't see Bama slipping there, and certainly I wouldn't think that. I'm sitting here looking through their very early 2025 schedule, by the way. Open up the season with FSU
in cancel that game
next year.
That's not worth it. Cancel it. Get a Florida Gulf Coast or somebody.
Kind of juicy that Gus Malzahn will be calling plays for the Seminoles in that game. How bad? How hot would the seat get if Bama lost to noted Crimson Tide taker downer?
Yep.
Gus Malzahn. Because you know how Gus would win, he'd be on the hottest of hot seats. And then he'd, beat Bama.
Yeah, beat him about every 3 years. Yeah.
Just
enough.
He had the perfect, I'm going to get myself on the hot seat. I'm going to save myself. And that lasted for forever, it seemed like.
Pretty much.
He had a lot. He would build up some cachet. So, I mean, you look at Bama's schedule. They'll be here in Columbia next year. Mm-hmm. It'll be a fascinating game. Let's see how their offseason goes with portal defections, gets, NFL defections. That job is different. Being in Tuscaloosa for the game this year. Remember, South Carolina game was the week after Vandy. I've said this before. The Bama fans just have a different lens that they view things through. It was incomprehensible to them that they could have lost a second straight game, and that the 2 losses could have been to Vandy and South Carolina. I mean, the kind of the conversation when I was talking with a bunch of Bama fans that whole weekend is like, man, we're probably going to have to beat y'all pretty bad to make up for last week. And it's like, well, okay. You got to kind of, you got to go play the game. But they just chalked it up.
But that's the way they've gotten used to it for the past 15 years.
They have evidence.
Yeah, you're sitting there like, well, that's kind of disrespectful. No, this is how we talk to everybody.
Yeah. It was they're very nice about it. It was just very matter of fact.
Well, I think we'll beat you guys by 50 today. Is that okay?
Yeah. They're like, we probably need to run up the score a little bit. And they kind of came back down to earth. They found out, no, you don't get into the playoff just because you're Bama. You don't get in the Citrus Bowl just because you're Bama. You lose a few games, you lose a couple stinkers. And Greg Byrne, yeah, I know we had a couple of days that we didn't play our best, but it's like, no, that's what you did.
Yeah.
That's what you get.
By the way, you had 3 losses. And again, when we expanded this playoff out, compared to the 4-team playoff where you're talking about teams that were undefeated or had 1 loss that you're kind of splitting hairs with, now you got a lot more data points there. Sorry, Coach Beamer. More data points to really look at saying, no, you lost 3 games. We have 3 instances of you not playing your best football to hold against you, which ultimately they did. And again, I was a believer going into the weekend that you shouldn't be penalized for, playing an extra game that you earned your right being to, no matter what conference you're in. And SMU benefited from that.
Yeah, I mean, there's problems. I thought I think Herb Street made a good point during the selection show the other day when they had him and Saban on talking. And Herb Street was saying, a lot of people were saying that, we expand this thing past 4, that there wouldn't be as much controversy. He's like, there's controversy. He's like, you guys, talking about Reese and the guys, it's like, y'all deal with it in March Madness. You got 64 plus because you got play-ins. You got 68 teams, and you're still sitting there going, Florida Gulf Coast should be a, 8 seed, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's
if we made this there are 134 FBS teams. If we made this 131 teams, 132, 133, and 134 would be very upset, and there'd be controversy there. Like, it's never going to end.
There'd be a Division II team saying we should be in Division
because
I.
unlike the NFL, which has a very formulaic process of, okay, here's your division, win your division, or become a wild card team based on, the record and make the playoff. There's never any debate in the NFL of who should be and who should be in the playoffs because they have a system that allows that to go seamlessly. That can never exist in college football, no matter how much we may try and circumvent it with the SEC and the Big Ten having scheduling agreements and all those kind of things. We're going to live in controversy forever. We just have to deal with it. So we'll see what happens. Speaking of the college football playoff, take a look at the odds as we head into the 12-team playoff coming up next weekend. Who's got the best odds to win, and who are the real underdogs going into this thing? It's coming up next. Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling Heating. Reminder, by the way, Friday, halftime show going to be out at Doco Station at 11 Samuel Bookhart Lane in Blythewood. And then Friday night, Love Chevrolet High School State Championship Edition show with Justin Hall and Elijah Campbell from 9 until 11. All right here on the game. Gamecock Club Hour here on the game. Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler and Chris along with you here on your Tuesday on the game. Reminder, one more game to go for the Gamecocks, and the Lower Lisa Special Teams Touchdown Contest does continue on for the bowl game. It says $1,200. I don't know if that's going to bump up to $1,300 because it's 13th game, but at least $1,200 up for grabs. And as it's been the case all season, go online to 1075game.com and register if you've not already for the Lower East Special Teams Contest as the Gamecocks look to score a special teams touchdown in the Citrus Bowl against Illinois coming up on December the 31st. BetMGM Sportsbook has the odds released for the national championship for all 12 teams in the new college football playoff. And no surprise, I guess Oregon is the number one seed going in at plus 325, best odds to win. Georgia at number 2, which is interesting considering the the injury obviously to Carson Beck and him likely not being able to return. Texas, Ohio State, and Penn State. It's interesting. I brought this up to Jack earlier. We love the Cinderellas and upsets in March Madness and all that kind of stuff. Hey, 16B to 1, 12B to 5, and seeing teams go on those kind of runs. When you get to the Elite 8 and the Final Four, okay, now I want to see Kansas. Now I want to see Kentucky, Gonzaga, those kind of teams that play a higher quality brand of basketball than, no offense, the Fairleigh Dickinsons of the world and things like that. I don't think underdogs are going to be viewed as special in a 12-team college football playoff as they are in March Madness. I don't think people are striving to see, hey, I want to see SMU go on this deep run and be in the national championship game or something like that.
Yeah, I think the upsets are fun as long as they continue happening.
Sure.
Because sometimes you'll see, you see you see a team make a run like in March Madness, and then they go and they play somebody, and it's like, ooh, and then it kind of reverts back to the mean. I think you look at those odds there, and, Boise State, Arizona State, they're two of the teams that got buys. They're not in the top, group in terms of odds there.
Right.
And that's because, they were ranked a little bit lower. They got automatic qualifiers. One of them's from the Mountain West. The other one's from Big 12. And both those teams are good teams. One of them has the best running back in the country. Arizona State has been a revelation this year. They have one of the best running backs in the country.
And by the rules of this playoff, they earned
that.
The AQ.
That's what they get.
Now, again, is that probably going to be restructured here in the next couple of years? Probably. But for the time being, they earn those spots.
Do you agree with – I'm not even going to ask if you agree with Oregon being number one. That makes sense. They're the team that has not lost a game.
Of course.
So that makes sense. Do you agree with you made an interesting point about Beck, too. Ohio State. That's an interesting one to me.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of bizarre. The feel around that program right now, kind of bizarre. Watching the selection show the other day, I didn't watch the entire 4 hours of it.
No, which, by the way, they strung us along for about 30 minutes before they actually revealed the actual
They've been doing
rankings.
better with that, but this time was rough. I didn't see the live shot of Ohio State and Ryan Day. Didn't see that.
I don't even know if they had one.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think they had one.
I mean, they kind of knew they were going to be in, so
but so did Notre Dame.
True.
And others. No live shot. You've got Kirk, who went to Ohio State.
Yeah.
And whose son just committed to Michigan. You've got him sitting there going, I think it'd be better if they didn't host a playoff game. Because if their first 3 and out, the fans are going to be booing, and it's like, something's off here.
Do you hear the Columbus radio host that went in on him for saying that?
Yeah. But that's an odd thing to say, right?
It is. And look,
especially as an Ohio State alum, and he keeps it. He's not a homer.
I'm
not. Just saying.
No, and I go back to the trance that Ryan Day was in after that Michigan loss, where he wasn't even aware of the fight going on and things he said after the game. I think that program's broken. Again, they have one of the most talented rosters in all of college football, and they paid for it this offseason. But I just don't know if I can trust them. Maybe they'll beat Tennessee, but I don't expect them to go on this deep run just because I think that's a program that's shell-shocked from an inexcusable loss to the rival in Michigan.
I'd pick Tennessee as of right now.
Yeah.
I think it just, not that Ohio State's a bad team at all. They're obviously not. But there's just... That Michigan game, it just kind of changed. The way they looked in it, it's a big game. Maybe Maybe they'll rebound. There was a game, and Ohio State lost still, but one of their playoff games one year, everybody expected them to get destroyed. Was it against Georgia? I think it was. Or was it Bama? I think it was Georgia. And they came out and played great,
Yeah.
And had a great game. Maybe that's what we get here, but I just, going in, it sounds weird to say for a team that, is literally hosting a first-round playoff game, but something's a little off there right now.
Yeah, I don't trust it. I think that's a program that is broken beyond repair for this year, at least. And again, we'll do plenty of preview for those games coming up the first round next weekend. We'll get back into the latest with the Gamecocks. Coming up next in the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Wes Mitchell, jump here with us as your Tuesday rolls along here on the game.
All right, guys, I want to tell you about one of our great partners here on the game. It's our friends over at Krantz Cooling and Heating. Shout out to Justin Krantz, General Manager over at Krantz Cooling since 1983. They have been servicing families here in the Midlands, any of their HVAC needs, family-owned and operated business. So if you've had a bad experience before with one of the other companies, give Krantz a try. KrantzCooling.com. That's Krantz with a K. Cooling with a K. They do a lot of great stuff out in the community, sponsor events, big community focus, big family focus. They can help you, again, with any of your home's HVAC needs, repair, maintenance, installation. Get on the Krantz Club to get on a regular maintenance plan so that you can have peace of mind in your home. Again, KrantzCooling.com, or you can give their helpful, friendly team, family-owned business, a call, 803-672-3224.
And welcome in 11 o'clock on your Tuesday morning. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler and Chris. Wes is set to join us here in a couple moments, but fashionably late as always, as we'll get into what's going on around Gamecock sports. And we'll kind of reset the big news of the past hour here coming out at 10 o'clock that the Garnet Trust has signed a new deal with Dylan Stewart to return for the 2025 season. And Chris, as you and I kind of talked about in the last hour when this news was coming out, that there was never really any threat of him leaving, but of course with somebody as productive as he's been this year, there's a lot of interest probably nationally of other schools saying, hey, come play for us, we'll get you X amount of dollars. That it was good that Caroline and the Garnet Trust were able to wrap that up, put a bow on it. And Wes, as we bring you in here, look, again, no surprise here that this happened, just good, and everybody can kind of breathe a sigh of relief that he's not going anywhere for next year.
Yeah, obviously, guys, some massive news for South Carolina here. And I think when you look at modern college football, like you are going to have some pushback. I've seen a little bit of pushback on social media of like, hey, guys, is this news or not? That the guy is returning. And to that, I would say look no further than the response around the country when Dylan just emerged. I mean, right off the bat, first couple of games of the year, everybody's talking about this kid, and instantly, not from people who actually know what's going on, but just the college football sort of, I guess, collective conscience out there. We're saying things like, can South Carolina keep him in Columbia? So I do think it is huge news for South Carolina. Again, not that it means there was ever any doubt, but, for South Carolina to get it done, for him to be happy in Columbia, both from a on-the-field standpoint, development standpoint, classroom standpoint, and, of course, let's not be naive. In today's college football world,